Hey everyone, I'm Dan from JazzComposersPresent.com, an online space where composers, musicians, and listeners come together to celebrate the music we love. I'm joined today by Alex Heitlinger, trombonist, composer, arranger, and director of jazz studies at Elon University. Alex is here to discuss subverting listener expectations.
Hi, welcome everybody. Today, what I thought we would do is look at an arrangement of mine through a lens of how to create expectations. As human beings, we're always anticipating the future, and I think every time we listen to a piece of music, we're constantly sort of predicting what might happen. And as a composer, these are things to think about. What do you believe the listener might be predicting, and how can we play with that? The author Leonard Meyer wrote a great book called Emotion and Meaning in Music, which deals with this topic. And he used this term of choreographing expectation, which I really liked. And the basic idea that he presented was that expectations, when they're thwarted or delayed or fulfilled, this creates a heightened or aroused experience in the listener. So what I thought we could do today is look at how this might apply to a standard tune, one that everyone is really familiar with, and we'll look at an arrangement that I did of the tune Autumn Leaves. Now, Autumn Leaves, as we all know, it's one of the most commonly recorded jazz pieces. Almost everyone knows it. A lot of people know the lyrics, and it sort of raises this question of why bother doing it again. And I would say that the more standard a standard is, the more that we can sort of mess with how adventurous we get in an arranging aspect and how much we can play with expectations. This piece was recorded on my most recent album, which is called Slush Pump Truck Stop, which was released in 2024 and which was my first big band album. So the three strategies we'll talk about today, the first one is delaying the arrival of the A section melody until the recapitulation and then framing it in a less typical way. The second one is twisting the experience of the melody on the bridge through unexpected shifts. And the third is truncating the final phrase of the melody before the solo section and delaying the arrival of that portion of the melody again until after the recapitulation. So we'll start with the introduction of the tune. And on this one, we start with a well-known introduction from Cannonball Adderley's version of the tune on the album Something Else. But I framed it in a slightly different way. I put a really busy layered background that was kind of inspired by Georgie Ligeti, I can't remember how to say his name, as well as Jim McNeely's piece, Extra Credit, which has this layered texture in it. And I also put it in a 7/4 meter, 4/4 plus 3/4. So this gets the listener prepared for a less standard version of the tune right away. But following the introduction, the listener would still expect the original melody to arrive. So let's go ahead and listen to the introduction. So at this stage in the composition, the expectation would be that the original melody would come in. But rather than do that, what I did is I started with a contrafact, or an original melody that I wrote over the previous chords, which replaces the original melody of the tune. So it's sort of putting the soli section in an unusual spot in the tune. This particular line has an opposing character to the original melody, whereas the original melody was very smooth and involves a few steps and then one leap. This one is very jagged and angular with dissonant landing points. It also plays on the interval of the perfect fourth, which is the first intervallic leap in the original melody. So let's go ahead and listen to the A sections now. So at this point in the arrangement, what do we expect next? The bridge. And what I did to give a little different flavor to the bridge was adapt the original melody in kind of a twisted way. And this technique borrows from the great pianist Rand Blake, who taught at NEC, which is one of my alma maters. And I used to love listening to Rand play melodies because he would do very unusual things, such as transposing the key of a line right in the middle of the phrase. And one of the things that inspired this was a bootleg recording that a friend of mine did of him performing the song Happy Birthday. So before we listen to my version of the Autumn Leaves Bridge, let's listen to Rand Blake's version of Happy Birthday. Now, this is a MIDI version. It's not the original one. And it also includes the more standard chords rather than Rand's chords, but it shows you where the lines transpose mid-phrase. To me, it's very similar to an accompanist, how they might have to shift keys to an especially bad singer. We've all seen versions of that on social media. So let's listen to a version of Rand Blake's Happy Birthday. So the first time I heard that, I was really blown away by how bizarre and interesting it was, and I wanted to try it. And so on the bridge to Autumn Leaves, what I did is kind of played on the lyrics a little bit. So the original lyrics to the bridge go, "Since you went away, the days grow long." So right on the word away is where it shifts away from the key. Let's take a look at a comparison of my version of Autumn Leaves with the original version on the bridge here. So as the slide goes up, you can see that in the second measure, we shift down a half step. And then a few measures later, we shift up a major third from the original key and then down a minor third. So this gives a sort of disjarring feeling to the entire bridge, sort of playing with how you would expect it to go. So let's go ahead and listen to the full version in the arrangement now. So you'll notice at the end there that the final phrase of the bridge, "When autumn leaves start to fall," was truncated. It was left out entirely. And what this does by leaving that phrase out entirely is it sort of leaves the listener saying, well, where did that phrase go, first of all? But also the phrase that are replaced with it also kind of plays on the lyrics again. So when autumn leaves start to fall, we have this falling line, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, and then a leap up to kind of create tension, lead into the solo section from there. But the idea was that that final phrase, "when autumn leaves start to fall," would only happen later after the solo section when the melody comes back. So now we get to the recapitulation. And through this whole tune so far, all the way through the solo section, we still haven't heard the original melody. So I bring back the original melody, but I bring it back in a different way. And this was through reharmonizing the chords below the melody. And the types of chords that I used here were mainly sus2 chords, sort of chordal harmony, and slash chords, sort of dissonant triad over strange bass notes. And I also tried to make the bass movement more stepwise. In the original tune, it's moving by perfect fourths. And here it's moving mostly by half steps and whole steps. And in addition to that, there's also less predictable rhythms to kind of give a disjarring feeling to this. Then on the outhead, the bridge appears as before, but now includes that final truncated phrase that was missing before. And then the piece ends with the introduction as before, which is similar to the Cannonball Adderley version where that intro figure comes in again at the end of the piece. So let's listen to the recapitulation. All right, so just to wrap up, a few takeaways, things that you might take from this. You might consider when you're writing, imagining what might come next if you'd never heard that phrase before. What might the listener be expecting as you're writing, and how can you play with that. And I think the way we do this as composers is going to be entirely personal. Some people might be more extreme, some people might be more subtle, but we all can kind of do this in different ways. Another thing you might try is looking back at pieces you've already written and looking at ways that you play with expectation already. What's worked best for you? And then finally, when things get too predictable, things can get boring. When it's too unpredictable, listeners might feel frustrated or alienated. So I think it's about sort of finding that balance that works for you. And if it works for you, then hopefully it'll work for listeners as well. So thanks again. Take care.
Thanks for watching today's mini lesson. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Drop any questions, comments, or suggestions for future videos down below. To watch our full-length events and participate in live Q&As with our presenting artists, head to jazzcomposerspresent.com. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.